This video is sponsored by KEH.
Nice to meet you. I'm Paulie Baldonado. Nice to meet you. All right, let me get rid of this. Okay.
Yo, we're back with another Walkie Talkie with the homie Brian. Introduce yourself. Let people know who you are. For those who don't know you.
Hi. My name is Brian. I go by Voyer1 on Instagram. I take pictures and I do other stuff. I find things on the street. Like earlier today, when I was walking around, where is it? Found this bag of hair.
What the heck? It was already in the bag, yeah?
Yeah. It was in the bag already. If it was loose, I probably would have declined, but we're here in South Brooklyn, Washington Cemetery, home to the best named of New York's parks, which is Friendship Park, nestled in the middle of a cemetery. This, obviously being Bay Parkway, is a popular street, but if we go to that street over there, which we're gonna walk, it's a street in between the cemeteries that is just a throughway. So there's no security cameras, there's no people really there ever. So everybody drops all their stuff, their trash, etc. And then I go through it. Most of my setup at this point is electrical tape, as you can tell by this. And the window where you see the film counter, this is a piece of a plastic bag, but it works.
Yeah, as long as it works.
If you've used a Mamiya 7 before, you know that when you advance, it has a little spring back. Let me make a picture of Mr. Paulie here, and then I'll show you what I mean. There's a whole, everyone's always talking about gear, you know, what camera do you shoot on? If you shoot film, what film do you shoot with? Doesn't matter. Oh no! They cleaned it up. There's always, for years, there's always a massive sloping mound of trash here and here, which I routinely come and find interesting things in. Not always, but sometimes. You find the bag of hair. This I found this morning, just some pieces of a manifesto, perhaps.
What do you do with all that stuff you find?
I will take you to my studio later.
Yeah,
and you will see. Normally there's plenty of stuff. Like this street right here is where there's a picture I made of these two white doors leaning against the gate of the cemetery, which was here. But the stuff is just dumped all the time.
How long have you been taking photos?
Okay, so seriously, I've been making pictures from starting in, I guess, the very, very end of 2016 was when I started making pictures. But I've been making artwork my whole life. I've always been an artist, but I was a painter and draftsman doing that kind of stuff. Ended up having this sort of existential crisis with my work where it looked okay, but it was more or less just a display of technical skill at that point. So I thought, well, how can I fix this? You know, I had always made reference photos to make my paintings and stuff like that from it, and I thought, you know, why don't I just get a proper camera, take some pictures, and then start again from there, intending to eventually have it translate into something else. But getting a proper camera, using the camera, it gave me this immediacy that I was lacking from painting. So photography gave me the immediacy to be able to be like, I have an idea, make the idea, it's done. Then you can filter and recycle and go through there and see where you're at, go back out into the world, make more. It's a quicker way to get to that part of the process, which is what I was looking for. Then it was a digital camera, by the way. Someone steals my digital camera, close friend, won't be snitching, but I know who it is. Anyway, my other friend lent me a film camera, just a little point and shoot, and that sort of just completed the whole puzzle where I got the immediacy I was looking for, or wasn't looking for, but needed, and once I had it, I knew that's what I needed, but still had the process-based things that film photography gives you where, you know, it's all physical, you're putting a roll into a camera and you're exposing it, and then you have to develop it and scan it, and there's all these different layers to the process, which is all different opportunities to look at, review, and think about the work before you're even at the finished product. The never-ending rabbit hole since is just making more pictures and seeing what's next and being addicted to looking at the world, just like everyone else that has a camera. I still do those other aspects of my art making process as far as like painting and stuff. Those are all condensed into these sketchbooks, which I'll show you guys at some point when we go to the studio later. I'm realizing a lot of the places that I walk around to make pictures have a lot of dead space in between getting to the places that I make the pictures. Forgive me if I don't take a single picture on this entire walk.
It is all good. How often do you find yourself making photos in between those spots though?
I mean, that's the thing is, I would say my favorite pictures are the ones that are in the in-between. You know, that's always the case with everything. The things that you're not expecting to be interesting are always the most interesting. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'm going to develop some work and I'm like, oh, you know, this picture and this picture and this picture, these are gonna be the ones. They're the best pictures I've ever made. Ah! And then this picture and this picture that are on the roll, they suck. They're trash. I shouldn't have made them, but I felt like I should make them. And then you develop it and the ones you thought were gonna be great are always the worst ones. And the ones that you were like, I shouldn't have even made that are always the best ones.
What about like evolution in photography style and interests?
I have always been interested in, will forever be interested in, you know, there's nothing quite like a slice of life, picture, movie, etc. It's all good. More often than not, I'm looking for like evidence. I'm looking for the remains of stuff, not an event, but that, you know, what can hint at there have been being an event at some point. Like, I don't necessarily want to photograph a party, but I want to photograph the deflated balloons, you know? I want to be able to make a photograph of a scene and you can imagine exactly what happened in that scene without the scene even being there or any of the people that participated in it being there.
Your interest in like your current style of finding evidence of things lived or events, where did that come from? Like, did you always, was that where you started photography, or did you kind of evolve from classic street photography or portraits?
Well, I mean, I don't even know if, I mean, I'll still make like what could be described as classic street photography. That may be the starting place, but I don't want that to be the finishing place. At the end of the day, I don't want whatever my pictures are to just be a slice of life. I want them to be a slice of life, but then what I want there to be is I want there to be some sort of emotional quality to it or some sort of thing happening within the photograph. I want there to be the idea that you can look at a picture that I've made and it makes you think a little bit. I want it to trigger some sort of generative thing where you leave it thinking about something else than when you started with, not just like, oh, that person is doing something cool. Oh, look, they did a flip. Wow. I feel like a lot of modern street photography is just like, people are just hunting. And it's like a sport, which I don't really like that. If that's what your practice you feel right doing, that is what you should do. And if you feel happy about it and satisfied, that is what you should do. Because at the end of the day, art making is a personal process that should be satisfying personally first and foremost before anything else. If other people like your work and enjoy it and want to see it more, spend time with it, that's awesome. But that should be far from your primary goal.
Is there anything you're thinking about in terms of like framing your photo right now? Or anything that you're trying to get in it?
No, I don't think I really ever approach a scene with like, I want to frame it this way. Because I feel like anytime I'm thinking too much about that, it ends up looking really static. There's more often things that in the composition that make me not want to take the picture than that make me want to take the picture. Like there's so many things that can ruin a picture and make me not want to make it. I find myself as the more and more I go, the less pictures I'm taking. I'm still spending the same amount of time making them, but just taking a lot less of them. So this is kind of cool. This vine grew in here and locked this door. I mean, it's also locked, but it's double locked. It's completely, the candy is completely dissolved. There's nothing left, but it still has the same shape. See, that's a picture that there's no picture to be made of that, but that's the exact kind of thing I want to make a picture of. You pick up a lollipop that looks completely normal, and the lollipop itself is completely gone. You're just left with the exoskeleton of the wrapper, but it still completely holds the form. So we have irons attached to some sort of wire with jeans wrapping them together. I don't know, man. I love this shit.
What makes you take the photo? So you just like went through a couple of different things that were kind of interesting.
I don't know, because the thing is like these are cool, but I don't know. A picture of this is more, you know. And there's certain pictures that I'll take that are just to remember it, because my memory sucks, and this is a better memory than anything you could have. And that's just me being picky. I could have made a picture of all of those things, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I can almost just already feel that I'm not going to want to ever do anything with that picture, and it's just not enough. So I'm not going to make it.
How long have you been using the Mamiya 7?
Since like 2018, but it only really became full-time using this in like late 2019, 2020, when I broke my M4, which I never got fixed. And I kind of like the aspect ratio of 6x7 more than 35, and having higher res pictures is fun too, but there's something about medium format that I've found myself identifying with more than with 35. I think part of it is that it itself is a slower medium, and I'm working slower these days, I guess.
And if you're trying to slow down, you can buy a camera similar to this Mamiya 7 on KEH. But also, if you're looking to speed up, KEH has all sorts of cameras, from 35mm film cameras to used digital cameras to mint condition medium format cameras. Whatever you're looking for, KEH has got, with an inventory over 60,000 items. And they've been doing this for over 40 years. So they've got the experience, they've got the technicians that know what they're doing. They're the best in the game. So buy your next camera, your next lens through KEH.
Oh yeah, the other thing I said I had in my bag that I was going to show you. So I found these in a box of stuff on the side of the street, and they're all these medical Polaroids.
Whoa, that's wild.
Got some ultrasounds, got some weird heat things, got some eyeball. You know, like I like smoke coming out of that car. I actually should have taken a picture of that. Too busy talking than making.
You talk about that car going by with the smoke and how you should have taken a photo. How often are you taking photos that are kind of just like impulse versus digging through, or more?
I mean, I would say like most of the work is like impulse. I mean, when I'm like looking through stuff, like when we just were back in that alleyway, that's more or less to find things to like take home with me. I'm never like setting up a picture. Like if it's like a picture I have of objects and stuff on the ground, which I'm doing more often than not lately, it's not, you know, it hasn't been arranged by me. It's, you know, I'm interested in the, you know, serendipity of it, just like, again, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of ties to more classical street photography, and that's where that is, because, you know, you want to see the things that life presents to you. The things I'm really interested in making pictures are the things that talk to me through my gut. And some of it is a gut reaction to something that's a fleeting moment. And sometimes it's a reaction to detritus, detritus, however you pronounce that word, on the ground, and remnants and things left behind. And
what are some kind of milestones or checkpoints for you in your career that kind of were signals that led you to believe, or kind of let you know that you're on the right track? This is all working out for you, you know?
Well, I had I mean, everything all kind of just stems from single actions that have just ballooned over time into other things. Like when I first started making pictures, one of the first photographers that I found that I really liked was Gus Powell. And in researching him, I saw that he was teaching a workshop with this other photographer, Haralampos Karanakis, who's a Greek photographer, goes by Dirty Harry. They were teaching a workshop together. And I thought to myself, if I can get in front of them, something will happen. I knew I would learn something from the workshop, but that wasn't like why I pursued it. I just knew that if I could meet them, I don't know, I just felt something would happen. So like I started off like just doing some volunteering stuff and then, or like interning kind of for Gus, and then assisted him on some jobs. And we've stayed friends ever since. And he's really been a huge like kind of mentor to me. And when I made my business card, which I was kind of proud of, which is, again, very similar to my found object thing. They're not handwritten. They were at some point. But I gave one to him and he was like, oh, give me an extra one. I want to give it to my design friend. 2 years go by and I get a cold call email about doing this book as a commission for a band, which I did. And that came out and I was really happy with it. And then it ended up getting nominated for a Grammy, which is insane. Then from that book, Gus told me to send it to Joel Meyerowitz. And then he got it and received it really positively. And now I'm like an archivist for him, which is ridiculous. And again, it's mostly I feel like I've just been stumbling forward and just like kind of running with my eyes closed.
What's your relationship with social media?
I think social media is an unfortunate, necessary part of being an artist nowadays. I mean, you really have to be able to share something. It doesn't necessarily even have to be your work, but you have to share something to keep yourself in people's minds to some degree. And to show that you're still working on things. I think it's good to keep work close to the chest and not spoil everything. But it is unfortunately, you have to feed the beast, as they say. I don't really ever post pictures of myself. When I do, my face is like obscured to some degree. Part of that's because I don't think me matters. Like if you're, following me, I want you to be following me because of my work and that only. And I'm not interested in any other reason for you to be like seeing what's going on. It is important to be very thoughtful with how you're sharing, what you're sharing, when you're sharing, etc. And you can do, again, it's the same thing. Like whenever someone's looking at any facet of my work, I want them to walk away ideally thinking about something or thinking about something in a different way, or at the very least just thinking about whatever sort of the narrative that I'm putting out there might be. Because whenever I post on my story, with very few exceptions, it is itself meant to be some sort of story. What is making up that story is always different. Sometimes it's a section of pictures that I just found on Google and have sequenced into me, sometimes it can be very simple and casual. Like I'll find a bunch of pictures of pretzels that are turning into different things, and then there's people that are stretching that look like a pretzel, and then that all gets sequenced together, and it's like very, very first level surface, but it's funny and amusing, and
Do you have a favorite photo that you've taken?
I mean, the clock, honestly, some of my favorite photos are just made around the cemetery we were at this afternoon, whatever it was earlier. A lot of those have been the ones that have stayed favorites for a while, because it ebbs and flows. I have stuff that I'm really into, and then I'll have moments where I'm like, why did I even make that picture? And then I'm in love with it again later, and it's, again, it's just if that's not a testament to how arbitrary everything is, I don't know what is. But I love the photo of the doors against the graveyard gates, and the clock in the trash can with no hands, with the dried up rose. Ooh, what do we have here? If I can avoid touching it. Oh, it's just a grocery list. I've gotten really good at flipping over paper with my feet, because some of this stuff is gross. It's really disgusting. I have a hat and a little crocheted stuffed heart. And the hat says love and the heart was there, and they found them together. But they were so gross that I just picked them up like it was dog poop with a plastic bag. And that bag is tacked up to the wall of my studio, and I haven't taken them out, but it's just hanging on the wall in exile. I almost feel like it's a bad thing to have a favorite photo, or at least one that's not changing often. Because I think in some ways that's an indication of stagnation to some degree. And there's also nothing wrong with being like, I made this body of work and that's my best work. That is disgusting. I love it. I'm serious. Like, I've been waxing poetic about trash all day, but there's just something that, it's so familiar. There's no person on earth that hasn't made trash. That almost is a point of entry to thinking about and understanding like a weird photo that starts off as, when you look at it, you're like, this is garbage. But then you're like, wait a second, is this actually a portrait of a person?
How do you think about goals? When it comes to your photography journey, your life?
Obviously, I feel like any artist, for the most part, would love to be in some sort of museum at some point. I mean, that's just, you can't help but want that. But I would say, realistically, beyond the like cut and paste goals that I would say most have, I really just want to make a bunch of books. As far as photography is concerned, the most meaningful experiences I've had, barring making photographs, have been in looking at photo books. One of my favorite things about photo books is that you can have photos that maybe individually aren't interesting or aren't powerful, that are elevated and become powerful by the context they're placed in within a sequence in a book.
So earlier you talked about photo books and how they've impacted you and how you see things. What's one photo book that kind of has made a big impact in the way that you see things or the way that you photograph?
I mean, I really like Raise a Laugh by Richard Billingham a lot. Also, a lot of Cristobal O'Hara's work, like his book Vanitas and Lance's De Aldea, which, excuse me if I'm butchering the pronunciation of either of those. But, I think a lot of the photos in there are very powerful, but in addition to that, one of the main reasons that I thought they were impactful is that there are a lot of photos in there that, from the technical side of things and maybe an academic way of looking at work, they're not good photographs because maybe they're blurry or out of focus, or maybe even the composition is strange in some cases. The photos are good despite that, and sometimes even because of that. And there were a lot of instances where the first time I looked at it, I didn't like X, Y, or Z, and then upon further visitation of it, it struck a different chord, and once I kind of got to spend more time with it, it really became more interesting. And I think that's like kind of something I try and seek in my own work sometimes, is trying to make a picture where it's kind of singing some sort of song to me when I'm looking at it in the editing process, but logically it doesn't seem like it's a good picture for some reason. But I feel like if it is, making that kind of noise in my head, then maybe there's something there that I'm not picking up on just yet. And I don't know, I think those oftentimes can end up being photos that when you come back to them later, you're like, oh, this is actually a good picture. I guess what I'm trying to say is looking at those books oftentimes can reveal, don't discount any picture you've made until later, and even then let it breathe and come back to it, give it a couple chances over, because sometimes there might really be something there.
How do you suggest somebody balance only shooting what they want to shoot while also trying to maintain a living through like making pictures?
It's impossible. I have so much respect for people that just go and do it. I mean, I don't know, because there's nothing wrong with that. I dream all the time about just making pictures and getting paid for it, but I really have a very hard time making any sort of photo I don't want to make, which sucks, because sometimes, you do something for money and it ended up being bland or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you got paid for it, you have to deliver whatever that is. And also there's a lot of real constructiveness you can get from doing stuff you don't want to do because, you know, you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Basically, making more pictures is always the right answer. Just got a coffee, and I found a fake $100 bill on the ground. It's just paper. Into the bag.
Earlier you mentioned that you work with Joel, as in like archiving, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's pretty close. You work pretty closely with Joel when he's here.
Yeah, I mean, Joel has kind of sort of become a surrogate grandfather to some degree. It's kind of amazing. It doesn't feel real. I don't know. He's just been a real mentor in a lot of ways. He's just the warmest, nicest, most compassionate, most like understanding, knowledgeable person ever. It's kind of absurd. And also the fact that he's 85 and he's so unbelievably unrestrained by age, both mentally and physically, completely locked in. But he's great. I scanned like 100 and something thousand negatives for him, digitized like all of his black and white negatives that have never been seen by anybody else, which was pretty special to experience, to sort of be the first one to look at all that stuff since he shot it 60 years ago. I was looking at it at the same age that he was making it. So there's this weird kind of full circle thing. Anyway, so welcome to my studio. We have this beautiful view of the skyline with the sun going down. So welcome to my studio. It's inside of a shipping container that has drywall and electricity, which is insane. And then because of the storage container stipulation, it's very cheap. But it's the perfect amount of space. Like as long as I can set up a couple picnic tables to do all my sorting, you know, as I'm going through magazines and stuff that I find on the street and counting them, and then, you know, painting and drawing and doing all that stuff. You know, it's just enough space where I could comfortably work over here, have like a computer area over there, and then like racks for storing stuff. And I basically just needed a spot to keep all this stuff and not have it be in my house. It was starting to get daunting to have quite literally piles of trash all over my room. It's good to be able to just keep it here and compartmentalize it. This is the bag of the hat and the heart I was talking about earlier, which is just stapled to the wall, and I probably should just throw it away, but whatever. Let's start with maybe one of my crown jewels. On the subway, everyone's seen those wet paint signs. I have found, rather, so far 76 of these little tabs that are cut and torn from those wet paint signs that say some variation of J-Day is coming, all on the back of these tabs. And I found these on the subway tucked into the corners of, like when you have the maps on the wall, like of advertisements or the subway map, like on the trains, tucked into the little corner of the frame like this were these little tabs. And so over a 4-year period or so, I was collecting these, and then COVID hit and I haven't seen any since. So I'm pretty sure whoever it was either stopped doing it, maybe they passed away, don't know. Hope they're okay. All I know is this was, to this day, one of the most incredible things I've ever come across walking around, because how I found the first one is I'm sitting on the subway and just looking at the person across from me, and then he gets up to get off at a stop, and as he gets up, tucked in the map right behind him is one of these tabs, and I just see it sticking out. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. And so when I got up to get off the train, someone else had sat down, and I just walked and just stuck my arm past them, grabbed it, and got off the train. You know, they're like confused, but so what? And then I'm walking away and I'm like, whoa, this is wild. Like once I saw the first one, I started seeing them all the time. And it was always a very weird, serendipitous kind of way that I found them. Just as much as I want to know what it is, I also don't want to know, because if I do ever find out who and meet that person or see them putting up, the mystery is deflated. I've been working on this book with found objects paired with my medium format photos for like 7 or 8 years at this point. So these will be a part of that. So I'm going to show you a couple different selections from things from that, and then the rest you'll have to wait till it's done. Oh, I have some crazy stuff. Like I have all these little journals that I found together in a box of stuff that someone was throwing away, and they're all like timed, dated observations of this person's neighbors. Person already in the house, 7:30 a.m. Last week, lots of trash out. All this time, no one in sight. So just completely banal observations, but 5 notebooks of them for one neighbor. So this is another one of those magnetic things where I was walking East Flatbush, middle of the day, dead silent, and I just get this kind of twinge in my chest, and I'm like looking over to the left, and I see this folded up piece of paper under a car's wheel. And I go up and I go to pull on it, and it's like stuck. So I lean against the car and I'm able to like get it out without really ripping it. And it's this, and I unfold it, and it's this, cute little drawing of a girl. And then on the back is the most like graphic, explicit sex game with dice that I've ever read in my entire life. And basically, if you roll 3 6s, you can do whatever you want to whoever you want in the group. And the dichotomy between the content of the back and the content of the front is just insane. Save. Oh yeah, this was folded up, like real tiny, like this, and thrown at me out of a moving van. Text to get sucked.
Seems kind of time consuming to like go through all these notebooks and like read all these passages.
Yeah, but it's, I don't know, it's fascinating to me because a lot of this stuff was never meant to be like seen by anybody. They're all like second person, they're intended for a very specific audience, and then it sort of slipped out of that cycle, whether it was actually being intended to be thrown away, in which most cases it was, or it was forgotten somewhere along the way. I found a lot of abandoned notebooks on the subway or on a bench in the park that, it was left by somebody, and it's just going to get thrown away otherwise. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of, some of this feels like I'm saving these moments, because they really are. A lot of these function just as much as a picture as far as its content, otherwise it was just going to get thrown away, at best recycled. And then when I pick up stuff that doesn't ring true, like I don't want to keep it, I don't want to hold on to it, then I just recycle it and throw it away myself. So it ends up where it was going to end anyway, but there's a chance that it could go on to be something more interesting and have a more extended life in one way or another. Like if you saw this McDonald's napkin on the ground, would you even think to pick it up or touch it? But on the back, it says, "What will it take to lose 5 pounds?" in pen. And it's on a McDonald's napkin. I mean, they're all like watermarked, so that's what it is. But it couldn't be more perfect as an object. Like if it was on any other napkin, it wouldn't be interesting at all. And some of it is like serious like that. Like it has like gravitas. It's talking about someone's like struggles with, whatever their perception of their body is and things like that. And the fact that maybe even as they're having that thought, they're giving into temptation, they're at McDonald's, So, but is that because they went there and then they didn't get anything and they took but most likely it's because they're, falling into the same cycle again. And it's a portal into this world of people I'll never meet and never will meet and would prefer not to meet, because now they exist as this otherworldly figure almost.
When you're going through these and you're reading them, do you have photos in mind that you're pairing with them, or does that?
Yeah, I mean, it's also often not necessarily that they are paired with photos, but that there's photos and then there'll be objects, and it goes back and forth between two, and it's, I'll have a piece of the narrative that's continued with photos. You have beat, ba-bum, 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 as you go from, someone doing this and they're doing that, and it's like photos tied together. And then instead of there being a break, as in a blank page, although that happens sometimes, you have a break where it's the object instead, which functions as a visual spacer because it's not a picture. However, it's still soaked in content as if it were a picture. There's a lot of most of these that I find to be really successful that are going to be, in the final project are, very often very heavy or very light, but it's in the same way where they have a clear, you read it and you can picture a kid smiling, or you read it and you picture a couple crying, and you can put yourself right in that scenario. So that it sort of acts as a way to have there be no dead space, but without having it feel crowded. And then there are some instances where something is paired directly with the photo. Like, I have like a photo of these rusty keys that someone had shoved into all the cracks in this one particular block on the sidewalk. It made no sense and was really interesting. And that'll be paired with these keys. We have this set to Janice Heaven. And then we have this set to Hell. I guess that's all to share for now. So just like this cover here is The Sun is Setting. The sun is setting on this interview. Thank you, Mr. Paulie.
Answer one more question for me.
What's up?
Or finish the sentence. I have everybody do this. Finish the sentence. I take photos because.
I have to.
All right.
And that's all I have to say.
Let's get out of here. Dude, I appreciate you. Let the people know where they can show you some love, where they can find your work, where they can keep up with updates about this project.
So the best place to keep up with my work is on Instagram. My Instagram handle is voyeur1. So @VOYEUR1. And I have a website that's perpetually under construction. So I will hopefully figure that out at some point sooner than later. All this is in the works. I have group shows every once in a while, working on some solo show stuff, working on some books, so more to come, and keep your eyes peeled for both stuff that's coming and the things that are out there in the world.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Everybody go follow Brian. Say what's up. Peace. We out of here. We gotta get out of here.
Now when they see us in the streets, all they wanna do is take